Hello everyone, I hope you're fine. Today I'm going to talk about this. Yes, you're right, assessment. So, how can we really make assessment meaningful, successful, and really something that would help not just you as a teacher but also your students, and it's going to be beneficial for you as well and for your students as well. They would really get to perform on it, and you would really get to see the results from that assessment, because assessment also should have a purpose. Assessment is not something that is a time pass through which we just pass our students just because we want to formally finish that as an activity. Like if we just take it as an activity that we need to just finish and be done with it, then that kind of assessment is never going to be beneficial. It's never going to show you any results. It's never even going to benefit the learning of your students, because assessment is actually a part of learning. And assessment, we do assessment not as an activity, but we do assessment because it's supporting our teaching, and then it's supporting our reteaching, it's supporting our intervention, it's supporting our assessment again and the teaching again. So it's a whole cycle. If you take assessment out of this cycle, the learning of the students is never going to be complete. That's why assessment, this is the value of assessment. So if our assessment has no purpose, and if it's just taken as an activity we just have to be done with it, then it's never going to show good results in the teaching learning process that we are carrying out with our students. Okay, it's never going to show any results, and it's also never going to help you to really see that, oh, so now my students are performing like this. Okay, assessment again. Oh, so now they are performing even better. Okay, so here they are facing this difficulty. So maybe in my next lesson, I should focus more on this point. This is why we do assessment. This is why we do assessment. Sometimes in a formative way and sometimes in a summative way. But it's all supporting our own teaching towards our students, what we are going to teach them next and what they need more support on next. That's why we do assessment. Let's focus on another thing that also sort of destroys the whole purpose and goes against the whole purpose of assessment. When you use tests that are ready-made, especially if you are working in tougher curriculums where you're not using the books to teach, but you are actually going more by the skills and the standards, right? So you are relying on all the online resources, which is actually a good way of teaching, but then to save time, we are we're supposed to, and we're also most of the time we are also required to use the ready-made assessments that are available with every lesson, with every unit, the ready-made assessments. So when we are relying a lot on those ready-made assessments, and sometimes we are not even having the time to even go through that assessment, but we just copy paste all the questions onto our own assessment in the forms, in the Google Forms, and we just share it with the students without us even knowing what was the skill in those questions, what were the strategies in those questions, and what kind of thinking level is required on every question. So we are just using, copy pasting the assessment that's made by someone else. So then again, this is also another reason why your students are not going to perform on that assessment at the end of the week, when you really worked so much, you used a lot of strategies to really make them hone a particular skill during the week, but then they are not performing on the assessment. So that's the reason, because you did not create that assessment. You know your students better, but you were not the one who created that assessment. So of course they are not going to perform on that assessment the way you expect them to. If you really have serious expectations from them, then yeah, in your first year it's going to take a lot of time from you to really create a new assessment each week, but then it's going to help you, because you are going to see results on every assessment that you would create. And it's not going to be random assessment, of course, because you will be using the standard and you will be using that same skill that you are teaching them, not a totally different strategy and totally different context and totally different theme in the assessment, and totally different from what you are using with them, the materials you're using with them, the context you're using with them, the themes and the strategies you're using with them, the discussions that you're having, all of these things go into the teaching process. So why not connect it well to the assessment? Connect it to the assessment. Assessment is not just an activity. Teaching, assessment, reteaching, interventions, assessment again, teaching, using the strategies that are required, because this assessment told you what was required from you to do. So you apply those new strategies in your next teaching, and then you assess them again, and then teaching. So it's a cycle, and this cycle is not going to run smoothly if there is zero connection or a total disconnect between what you teach them and what you assess them on. So that's one thing. Another thing is, when you are creating your assessment, make sure that you give them opportunities to think, especially if you are doing a lot of thinking practice with your students. If you're doing a lot of thinking practice with your students, then give them opportunities to think in the test as well, because when they see the test, that's how they know actually what is your expectation, what you really want them to do. That's how they know this. But when you give them poor assessment, you give them the assessment where they really were not, they really had no chance to think. So they will not think of it in a direct way, but they will think of it indirectly. Their mind is unconsciously going to take this hint from you that, oh, teacher doesn't have much expectation from us, so we can just pass time on this assessment. We can just circle here and there and pass time. So make sure that you create really meaningful assessment, connect it to what you taught them, make it meaningful. So at the end of it, you can actually see them perform on the skills that you taught them, and the results would be better than the previous assessment. So that's how you would be actually able to show progress. But it's not just for you only, but your students need to learn, right? They need to show some improvement in their understanding and their learning. But if there is no connection between what you taught them and what you are assessing them, they will never show improved thinking, improvement in their understanding, improvement in their working, improvement in their performance. Because at the end of the day, all of this teaching learning process is done to support the kids. So if the kids are not being supported properly, that teaching and that assessment is of no use. So I hope there would be some tips and there would be something helpful in this video that you might be able to take away. Thank you so much.